Episode 5 begins at the Kessler's control room. So there's Panthro and Tigra, and they were looking all over the area on Third Earth. Well, so far everything's quiet, for now anyway. There's nothing happening. But then, all of a sudden, what Tigra doesn't realize is that he has caught something that's coming from nearby, at the volcano, of course. Oh, you're probably wondering, where did Cheetara go? Oh, don't worry, she's there. And wouldn't you know it, Tigra wasn't kidding when he told Panthro about Chitara's morning run. And of course, he's not kidding when he clocked her very fast, by speed, of course. So Panthro made a suggestion with Tiger to have the volcano checked out, and Tiger agrees. And even better, according to Panthro, the Thunder Tank is ready to go. So while Tigra and Panthro, after they left Castlear, were back with Chitara, speaking of which, she passed out. But she didn't realize is that Monkey and Jackalman were also there. So Jackalman and Monkey decided to take Cheetara back to the Black Pyramid. So by the time that Tigra and Panther had arrived in the Thunder Tank at the volcano, there was no sign of the activity. Plus, on top of that, they were unaware that Cheetara was missing. That's because they didn't know is that Monkey and Jackalman had showed up earlier and took her to the Black Pyramid. So long story short, after Panthro had told Tigra that Lionel can have the Thunder Tank for a while since they got back. So meanwhile there, after Lionel had told the Thunderkins that they had to wait for Cheetara to come back, but he too finds this very weird because he too was unaware that Cheetara was kidnapped by the mutants, of course. So meanwhile at Castle Plondar, here you see Monkey and Jackalman who just told Sly, the leader of the mutants, the good news that they had just captured Cheetara. And Jackalman says that even better, she's at the Black Pyramid right now. Sly, the leader of the mutants, who is not only pleased to hear this news, but he hopes and prays that the plan will work. And why is that? Because according to him, what he says in his case, that the Thundercats themselves are very clever. He's not kidding. Plus, on top of that, he even says in his case that Mumm-Ra shouldn't be trusted. But on the other hand, that Sly says in his case is still a good idea. So he and his mutants had all agreed that they should wait and see what happens. So later at the Black Pyramid, and there you see Cheetara in the tomb chamber and along with Mumm-Ra, who pleaded his case to say, "So, you must be Cheetara, the quick one they call you," he said. So you're probably wondering what was Mumra's plan with Chitara? Well, he told her not to worry, that she'll be joining her friends soon enough, and of course he's not kidding when he said that. But according to what he says, that she'll remember absolutely nothing about the incident that just happened to her. So he says, "Just sleep for now," he said. Then, according to what Mumm-Ra said, he's going to do something he's never done before. He's going to try to leave the pyramid for the first time. And how's he going to do that? Well, as always, he calls upon his spirits of evil to transform into his monstrous form first. Then he tries a new disguise that he's never done before for the first time in his, how you say, morbid life, to coin a phrase. So what did Mumm-Ra do? He disguised himself as Pumra Thundera. So later that night, back at the volcano where Cheetara was taken from moments ago since that morning, and that's when he gave her something to drink. Pumra, that is. And by the time that Cheetara woke up, she was face to face with a stranger that she's never met before. So he was more than happy to introduce himself to Cheetara. So, after Chitara found out what is going on, and that Pumra just claimed a case to say that she's been earlier been kidnapped by the mutants, and he has to be the one to fight them off. Pumra, that is. Then Pumra told Chitara, "Forgive my haste. Since you're now feeling better, I must be off." But she says, "Wait a minute. Who are you and where are you from? Are you from Third Earth or something?" And then Pumra just confessed that he told her that he was from Dondera, just like she was. Then she realized that something was off because he just confessed that true, all the ships that tried to escape were destroyed except for his, of course. So long story short, after Cheetara had learned everything about Mumm-Ra, or so she thought, that's when she made a suggestion to go to Cat's lair with her. The reason? She also suggested that her friends should meet up with him while they arrive. And of course, Mumm-Ra was more than happy to. So meanwhile, at the Cat's lair's control room, thanks to Cheetara, she brought along Mumm-Ra, whom she had just met recently. Of course, Lionel was more than glad to meet him, and so were Panthro, Tigra, and the Thunder Kittens, and let's not forget Snarf, who was also there. And of course, Lionel was more than happy to agree to let Mumm-Ra join the Thundercats. So Lionel wants to know from Mumm-Ra, since you saved Cheetara's life, will you try to live the laws of truth, justice, honor, and loyalty, the code of Thundercats? Well, not only did Mumm-Ra agree, and of course he also agrees, and he's not kidding, that friends are indeed important. So Panthro suggested they should all talk about it in the council room the very next day, and they could vote on it then. But in the meantime, as Tiger says in his case, that Mumm-Ra is their guest. So Lionel told Wily Cat, who's Wily Kit's brother, to take the guest to his room. Wily Kit agrees, and they both head out. So after Mumm-Ra left the control room, that's when Snarf sensed that something was off, but he couldn't figure out what or why. Plus, on top of that, he told Lionel, his companion, that he is not to be trusted in any way, and he has a reason for it. So Lionel pleaded his case by asking a question, "What makes you think so? You don't even know him," he said. Well, Snarf says when he explains in his case that you may say it's an intuition of some sort. So Panthro told the others, "We'll meet in the council room in about an hour," and all of the Thundercats agree. So back with Mumm-Ra, now in his guest room. So Mumm-Ra gets on his walkie-talkie, but what the Thundercats are not aware that he has just contacted the mutants back at Castle Plondor. First of all, Mumm-Ra just told Slythe, the leader of the mutants back at Castle Plondor, the good news, and that he's at the cat's lair, just the way it's planned. So meanwhile, in the meeting room of Castle Plondor, after Slythe had heard this news, after he had found out where Mumm-Ra is, so Slythe wanted to know from Mumm-Ra if he wants to know what the Thundercats are planning, and that he should go to the war room. But Mumm-Ra pleaded his case to say that he doesn't need any instructions, and then told Slythe, the leader of the mutants, just show up where you're supposed to be. Also, on top of that, to make sure that Slythe and his mutants will be showing up sometime around noon, and Slythe agrees. So the very next day at the Castler's council room, so the first thing that Tiger said as the first agenda, that since Lionel's the leader, Jaga, according to what Tiger says in his case, has chosen Tiger to be the head of the council. Second of all, according to what Tiger says, that since Mumm-Ra has saved Cheetara's life, and that he's from Thundera, or at least that's what he claims. So Panthro, before the decision was made, has asked Cheetara a question, if she has seen Mumm-Ra before she passed out recently. So Cheetara said no. So before Cheetara can continue to plead her case, that's when Lionel makes the decision to take Mumm-Ra in. But then suddenly Jaga's spirit appears to tell Lionel, "Whoa, wait a minute." Then Jaga's spirit pleaded his case to say, "True, your instincts are correct, but you shouldn't jump to conclusions to make the decision just yet." Then Jaga's spirit also pleaded his case to say that the decisions themselves shouldn't be acted on instincts alone. "Let the facts be decided first," Jaga's spirit said, "and then just listen what your peers had to say." But remember, you must use extreme caution, Jugga Spirit said. So after Jugga Spirit disappears and then Lionel agrees that he should take more time to decide for himself and let the judgment play itself out before the decision can be made. So Lionel looks at Tiger to ask what he thought of it. So Tiger made a suggestion to have Mumm-Ra to have a week probation, and then he can decide for himself. So Panthro, although he agrees with Tiger to give Mumm-Ra a week's trial so that he could decide for himself as well, and then he pleaded his case to say, well, if he is who he claims to be, then he also said that there shouldn't be any objections whatsoever. Even Cheetara agrees with Panthro, and so everyone voted to give Mumm-Ra a week to see how it turns out. But little didn't they know, oh, speaking of Mumm-Ra, back with him, he's now in a hallway looking for the Castler's war room. But before he could do that, he went to the control room first and did some wrecking in there. Then he went to the Thunder Tank's garage and sabotaged the controls of the Thunder Tank to make sure it doesn't run anywhere. Well, long story short, if you're probably wondering where Lionel is, he's sleeping in his room. That was after, long story short, Mumm-Ra had pleaded a case to say somehow he must be sleeping with his sword. Well, back with Mumm-Ra, he had just arrived at the sword chamber, outside of the door, of course. So what Mumm-Ra did next is that he had found a secret way in, a device of some kind. So he uses it to open the chamber door. So by the time he arrives inside the sword chamber, that's when he's face to face with the Sword of Omens and Lionel's claw shield on the bottom, of course. So Puma's suspicions were proven wrong. Lionel does not sleep with his sword after all. So what did he do? He did what any bad person should do, cover the sword's eye. And then after that, Mumm-Ra just took the sword and then ran off with it. But if that's not bad enough, he also took Lionel's claw shield too. So meanwhile, 1 week later at the Cat Slayer's console room, Mumm-Ra had joined up with the rest of the Thundercats that were also there, including Snarf. And that's when he says, I understand, and I wanted to prove once and for all that I am worthy enough. Well, speaking of Snarf, just like a week before, he still has a reason not to trust him, and he still sensed that something was off. So after Tigra agrees, and that's when Panthro suggested that he and Tigra should go to the Thundrium fields right away. So the Thunderkins wants to know, should we take the Thunder Tank? No, Panthro said. So instead, Panthro suggested that they should walk there. So before heading off, that's when Tigra told Lionel not to worry, that they'll she be back a little bit later. And Lionel agrees, and so everyone else head off. So long story short, after Lionel agrees with Snarf that the game itself is more boring than guarding the lair and everything else, so that's when they both decided to go inside the control room. But when Lionel tries to turn on the telescreen, nothing. The screen's all blank. But what's even weirder is that when Lionel looks for the power supply to see if that was functioning properly, it was all full. So what Lionel did next is that he and Snarf went to the sword chamber to see if his sword and his claw shield were there. But by the time that they arrived, the sword chamber's empty. His sword's gone, and so is his claw shield. What was going on here? So Lionel, after he followed Snarf's suggestion, went to the Thunder Tank's garage and along with Snarf to see if there's a correspondent so that Panther could be contacted. So by the time that he and Snarf arrived at the tank, here's something else that's weird. The tank isn't moving anywhere. And that's when Lionel and Snarf discovered that there is something serious going on. The tank isn't working, the controls in the control room's not working, his sword's gone, And then something or someone else has signaled from the cat's lair to let Slythe and the mutants know. And speaking of which, there they are now to learn that it is time for their attack. So back with Lionel and Snarf after they had discovered of what was going on, that's when Snarf was proven right. Something was off with him. That Mumm-Ra is not a puma at all. Lionel should have known by the time he heard that familiar voice. So Snarf is now dreading with fear and says, I just knew something bad's gonna happen. I just knew it. So Mumm-Ra with the familiar voice and says, stay back and do as I tell you to do. So Lionel knew that this puma has been lying to them all along. And he said, you're not who you think you are. You're not one of us. I should have known better than to trust you, Lionel says. Just what do you want anyhow? Then Mumm-Ra pleaded his case to say, I want everything and anything that goes with it. And by the end of the day, I'll go and do what it takes to get it. So Lionel goes upstairs to tell Mumm-Ra, get it up. This sword does not work for you. I'll take it away from you if I have to. And then before you know it, Mumm-Ra just accidentally let slip to Lionel to say that they had met before previously, just 4 episodes ago. And then he also let slip to reveal himself. So speaking of which, long story short, while that's going on, Panthro, Tigra, and Cheetara found out what was going on back at Cat's Lair, so they knew they had to hurry to find out what happened. And then back at Cat's Lair, some kind of lightning storm just struck Mumm-Ra, and that caused him to throw the sword and the claw shield back to Lionel when it tumbled down the stairs. So before Lionel can get his sword and his claw shield back, he was told by Jaga's spirit that the Sword of Omens cannot respond to evil, no matter what. So Lionel went upstairs to get his sword and his claw shield back, but before he could do so, Mumm-Ra went to attack him. Well, good news, Lionel at least gets his sword back, but Mumm-Ra told him it is a little late. Now don't ask me how the mutants managed to get the tank going, but they're in the Thunder tank. Well, long story short, after Lionel manages to shorten out the cannons from the Thunder Tank, that's when he knows what to do. He uses his sword to call his friends from his sword. Well, speaking of his friends, they tried to hurry to get to the cat's lair after they saw the Thundercats signal. Well, good news for Lionel's friends, they made it to the cat's lair, but now here comes a problem. Lionel wanted to attack the mutants, and when Slide have heard what had happened, that Lionel's coming behind him, that's when Lionel went to attack. Well, luckily for Panthro, good news for him, he managed to pick up the tank and threw the mutants off. And so the mutants ran off, and after Panthro apologized to his friends for accidentally throwing them off, that's when they, along with Lionel and Snarf, are face to face with the fake Mumm-Ra. Well, at least Lionel knows that his friends are okay, but now here comes the problem. They can't get inside of the lair. But aha, it doesn't mean that Tigra has a plan. He has to find himself another way in. But Cheetara is getting worried that the fake Puma may turn on the power source itself. Well, Lionel tells her that if that's the case, then that's the risk they'll have to take. So Lionel suggested that he should go in instead. But Tigra pleaded his case to say that since he's the architect of the place and he's not king, he's the one who should go inside. So Jaga's spirit appears to Lionel after he pleaded his case to say that he's the one with the sword. That's when Jaga's spirit says that ingenuity is the key, not bravery and strength. Then Jaga told Lionel one last thing that he should agree with Tigra. He's the one who should go inside. So Tiger agrees to go inside the cat's lair, and by how? By going inside the power source that's located in the head of the lair. So, long story short, after Tigra did that, But outside, here comes a bigger problem. The eyes, for some unknown reason, turn themselves on. So when Pantro says, "Watch out for the eyes," everybody else moved out of the way, including Cheetara. So long story short, Pantro pleaded his case to make sure that Tiger had made it. Well, just to be on the safe side, Lionel knows what to do. To make sure the Tiger did make it inside, he uses his sword. And of course, Lionel did see that good news Tigra did make it inside. So Panthro suggested to climb his way up. As for Chitara, she does what she knows best, created the destruction for the ice beam, of course. As for Lino, he knows what to do. To short out the ice beams, for a while anyway, he uses his Thundercat signal from his sword, of course. So now that the lair's door was open, Lino and Snarf went inside. The control room, of course. So back with Mumm-Ra, now in the mouth of the lair, he saw Panther climbing his way up. So he knows what to do. He conjured a creature to stop him. Well, back with Panthro, he does what he knows best. Tries to fend off the creature the best way he knew how, by using his nunchucks, of course. Despite a minor setback, good news for Panthro, he managed to jump on top of the creature. So after a long story short, Panthro had took care of the creature and landed on the bridge back in the control room. Now that Puma is inside the control room, but he's not alone, Tiger's with him, and he started to attack Mumm-Ra. But by the time that Lino had made it, well, let's just say that Tiger took care of that situation. So finally, after Cheetara and Snarf showed up moments later to join up with Tiger and Lino, that's when he told Mumm-Ra to give it up because he's surrounded. And I guess Lino wasn't kidding when Mumm-Ra has nowhere else to go when Panthro shows up. So when Panthro and Cheetara demanded to know who he is, "Who am I?" Mumm-Ra asked. So Mumm-Ra pleaded his case to say, "Well, wouldn't you like to know?" he said. So by omission, by confession, Mumm-Ra says, "Well, suffice to say, I've been around longer than you are, so you know what this means." Chitara should have known that that puma was a fake all along when he pleaded his case to say he's not the intruder and that they are, and they had invaded his rest ever since they've arrived. And that's when he also pleaded his case that he was really Mumm-Ra in disguise. He also pleaded one last case to the Thundercats that no matter where evil is, he will exist. And so after that, he disappeared. And now Chitara is overwhelmed with guilt to ask herself, how could she have been so blind? Sometime later, thanks to Panthro, he's got the controls working again. Of course, what's left to do is to replace the cat's eye's lens that was accidentally broke. Well, Tiger goes first to speak in his case to say that they hope to never see Mumm-Ra again, but Chitara says that even though she agrees with him, she's not so sure that they will bump into him again sooner or later. Well, Lino, although he told his friends that he pleaded his case to say how wrong he is to misjudge that Mumm-Ra so easily. Well, first impressions may be wrong, Tiger says, but as the saying goes, trust can take a lot of time for it to grow. Of course, Lionel agrees with Tiger that even with new friends, they could be very hard to find. True, Snarf says when it's his turn to plead his case, but friends like the Thundercats, just like ourselves, they're forever. And they all agreed with Snarf. So when will Mumm-Ra be able to bump into the Thundercats again? And what kind of new plan will he conjure up? Well, that ends episode 5.